Welcome to Work Life by Design. I'm your host, Mel Marsden. As a passionate entrepreneur with a desire to create places where people and business thrive, I hope to inspire you to find your place at work and in life so you can live a life by design. You'll hear stories of transformation, exploring everything from organisational psychology to brand, and identifying opportunities in your workplace and your life to inspire your human potential. So, let's get started. Hello and welcome back to a brand new week and a new episode of the podcast. This is episode number 84 and I am pretty excited today because I am jumping on a plane and I'm going to Sydney. And the reason I'm heading to Sydney is because I am going to be speaking at the Thriving Workplace Conference down there. Now, it has been a long time since I have spent any time in a room with a lot of different humans at a conference. The last conference I think that I was at would have been the Business Chicks conference in Broome back in October 2019. So it has been quite a while between drinks on this one. So I am super excited to be heading down there. So while I'm there in Sydney, I'm going to be sharing our Workplace Dynamics Blueprint. So I'm running a 3-hour workshop where I'm going to be taking the participants through the 5 pillars that underpin the dynamics that exist in every single organisation. So we're going to be exploring the first pillar, which is all around the future of work. So we're going to be reimagining what the future of our workplaces is going to look like. We're going to be thinking about the impact that technology is going to have on our workplaces, external influences, any new trends, industry disruptions, anything that could be impacting on our organisation in the near future so that we can start to map out ways that we can manage that. Pillar number 2, we start to dive into brand and culture. So we want to start looking at what the purpose of our organisation is, and then we want to start understanding what the brand experience is that we want both our employees and our clients to have when they're working with us. Because when we can start to infuse that into the very fabric of our environment, we can start to elicit emotion. We can start to create feelings of connection. And that's the experience that we want people to have when they're working with us. Because when we infuse that into our physical environment, what it starts to do is it ripples out in the creation of culture. And that's really important for our organisations. The third pillar is all around our values and our behaviours, because when we understand what the values of our organisation are, what we want to hold true and what's important to us, what we're standing for and what we're standing against, we can then start to articulate the behaviours that underpin that. And when we understand those behaviours, we can start to influence the way that people show up at work. And we do that through the tools that we give them, the way that we create space, the way that we design flow. All of these elements start to influence the way that people behave in a space, and we can guide them to do that in a way that then supports the values of the organisation, which enables that culture and brand to happen as well. Our fourth pillar is all around well-being, and we all know how important it is to maintain a very healthy culture, but also the health and well-being of our employees. And so when we can start to encourage our employees to maintain healthy behaviours in this very evolving, rapidly changing world of work, we can start to create spaces that support people to enable them to take care of themselves in a much better way. We can give them a space that enables them to flourish, which in turn then enables your organisation to flourish. Now, this covers everything from our physical spaces and how we can encourage incidental exercise and active movement at work, through how do we support mental and emotional well-being in our organisations as well. So that's our fourth pillar. And finally, our fifth pillar is all around the employee experience. Now, we're all very individual, and for so long our workplaces have always been a one-size-fits-all. This is the space, there's your desk, off you go. However, when we start to look at the generational differences, diversity and inclusivity, we start to look at personality profiling, we start to look at all these variabilities around individual work preferences and practices, we start to see that there are a multitude of different spaces that are required to support the individuals that work for you. Everyone is doing a different role. They have different tasks that need to be performed. And so when we can create a workplace that is enabling that, we are actually setting them up for their best success. We are enabling them to perform at their highest level and we can then get our optimal productivity. So that's what we're going to be covering off in the Workplace Dynamics Blueprint, and it's all around how we can start to look at what the future of our workplaces are, because we have the ability to transform these from the inside out. Our organisations can transform from that inside out. And the exciting thing with this is that all of the data that you need to do this exists within your very four walls. All you need to know is how to extract it, how to interpret it, and then how you're going to transform it and create an action plan for your future. So all of that comes out of this 3-hour workshop. We start to work through this. We start to lay those foundations. We start to look at where we need to be digging to be able to get that information, to be able to start to lay that platform as we move forward. But I'm also going to be talking about how our environments positively impact on our behaviour and our performance at work. And the reason that this is such an important conversation is because there's so much discussion at the moment around, do we need an office? What is the purpose of our workplace? Why do we even need to go to work when we can work from home? You know, this whole conversation about why. And when we start to drill down, and I've gone through this on many, many different occasions, but what is the purpose of your workplace? Why do you still need an office? And the answer to that, in my opinion, is that it's about connection. It's about collaboration, and it's about community. It's about a place where we can start to build social capital within our organisations by building relationships between people, between teams, and between the individuals and the organisation. Now, I want to give you a little snapshot about how this can start to come to life. So when we start to talk about connection and that social connection, what we're talking about here is the fact that, you know, we are all human beings, and as far back as we can go, our brains are actually hardwired for belonging. We have a social need for connection. If we go back in history and we look at where we were and when we're in caveman society, it was all about a need to belong. If we didn't belong, we would not survive. And so there was actually a study done by Matthew Lieberman, who's the professor of psychology, psychiatry, and biobehavioral sciences at UCLA. And what he found was that when we feel socially excluded, we actually feel physical pain. So to give that some context, think about back to your school days, and let's say you're playing in the playground and you've got a group of friends there, and all of a sudden they say you can't play with them. That social exclusion drives a sense of physical pain within our bodies. Our bodies cannot distinguish between emotional pain and physical pain. And so that is what's happening when we feel like we don't belong in a workplace environment. So it's really important for us to be able to create places and spaces where we feel like we belong. So as humans, our natural instinct is to search out that sense of connection. We are hardwired to stay safe through that connection by feeling like we have a sense of belonging to a group or to a tribe. Now, in our workplaces, we spend more time there than we do really anywhere else. And so it makes sense that we want to be fostering the creation of those deeper relationships and building more meaningful connections with those that we work with. And so by creating really healthy work environments that address our mental and our emotional well-being, we can start to create that sense of belonging at work. And when we are building that sense of belonging, what we are doing is we are looking for shared experiences, because when we have shared experiences, that makes us feel like we have a connection to somebody else. We are building that sense of community. And when we're building that community, what's happening is we're actually building that through a sense of connection. And that sense of connection is actually occurring in 3 ways. Now, the first way is through our body. It's our physical connection. It's our contact. And it's in a way that's actually physically acceptable. So, you know, prior to social distancing and other ways, we had handshakes, we had high fives, we had ways of actually physically connecting with one another in the workplace in an appropriate way. The second way is through our heart, and our heart is all about our vulnerability, finding something that we have in common, a shared experience that connects us, because we can start to relate to that. And those are those things that start to look to connect us in a way that is deeper than that superficial level. These are the things that really go to the heart of building that sense of community, because we have shared values, we have shared experiences, we have shared beliefs. And that's about opening our hearts up to connect with those around us, to build that sense of vulnerability and that sense of connection to one another. And the final way that connection happens is through our minds. Now, when we're connecting through our minds, it's often through a state of play. It's about being in flow. It's about where time just passes effortlessly. We are being creative and we're being curious. And the thing that happens when we are being creative and curious is that we're actually building new neural pathways within our brains. And when we're building these new neural pathways, we're essentially getting smarter. So it's really important for us to be finding opportunities to find joy in what we are doing. Now, I often talk about going out and finding joy in the work that you do, or finding ways to experience joy on a daily basis. And this is why, because when we have that sense of joy, we are building those new neural networks within our brain and we are getting smarter, we are getting more creative. And so it's really important to incorporate that into our daily work. Now, play is also very vulnerable, so we need to be creating spaces where we can experiment and we can explore. So it needs to be a really safe space. And when we're bringing those three elements together, that's when we're really starting to build that sense of connection. Never before have we collectively experienced such change on a global scale. The pandemic, whilst on one hand has challenged us in ways that previously we could have only imagined, on the other, it has opened the doors to incredible opportunity. The opportunity to redesign our work lives in a way that works for us. An opportunity to disrupt, reset, and recreate our new normal. And to help you on this journey, I am so excited to bring to you the Work-Life Lounge. This is your VIP pass to accessing some of the greatest thought leaders in our world of work. So often we are told what we need to do and why we need to do it, but we are often left wondering, but how? How do I make the changes that I need to? And that's where the Work-Life Lounge is here to support you, to guide you step by step through the how, to take back control and design your work life on your own terms. I can't wait to see you in the lounge. Now, let's get back to the episode. Now, I want to talk more about connection and the creation of community because that's really what our workplaces are doing. And the other way that this starts to happen is through social neuroscience. Now, I am not a neuroscientist, but I am totally fascinated by it. And one of the things that I found particularly fascinating is around neurogenesis. Now, neurogenesis is the creation of new dendrites and new neurons, which form new neural nets and packages of information in the brain called chunks. So in short, this is us building our new brain. So when we are in that sense of play, that creative and curious space, we're building these new neural nets. Now, a couple of years ago, I had the good fortune of meeting Dr. Fiona Kerr at another conference, and I've been following her work ever since. And what she saw in her research was that charismatic managers and their staff grow the same maps of neural information. And what it's doing is it's creating an internally matched view of ideas and aims. So essentially what she's saying here is, you know that old saying of being on the same page? What they essentially found was when they did brain imaging of a manager and their team, when they had these charismatic managers, what they were seeing was that they had these same neural network patterns within their brains. So effectively, they were on the same page. They had a far deeper connection between their employees and their managers, which only further enhanced their culture of connection. Now, what was causing this, though, was that ability for them to be able to connect and to communicate in a way that was safe and that they felt like they were being heard and they were being in a space that enabled that. Now, what really fascinated me about this was that in her explanation of how this had happened, what I had realised is that I had been creating spaces that had inherently been enabling this for years as a designer. I just didn't know that there was a social neuroscience aspect that underpinned this. I had been doing it because I had seen that it was working. I had seen that it was creating these connected teams. There was the ability for people to be able to communicate more effectively. And all of this was being underpinned by this neuroscience. Now, why this is important in our workplaces is because that these connections can only happen when we're in a face-to-face environment. So a lot of our meetings these days are either over Zoom or through Teams, but what's happening there is we're not getting that direct eye contact that we are needing to be able to facilitate this neurogenesis. So when we meet face to face, we're actually creating a new bit of brain, because what's happening is that when I meet you face to face, our eyes actually lock. So there's a process called a retinal eye lock, and my eyes lock onto your eyes. Now, this doesn't happen over Teams or Zoom. It has to be in a physical connection. Because what happens is there's a chemical reaction that happens in my brain when that retinal eye lock happens, and my body stores it. And now I have a relationship with you that has been built from that physical interaction. However, the beauty of this is that once it's been established, your brain will continue to make that connection with someone, whether you're picking up the phone or you are jumping on that Teams call. But we have to establish that at face-to-face initially. So these are some of the reasons why we need our workplaces to enable us to build that connection, to build that collaboration, to build that sense of community, and really, really foster that sense of social capital that underpins the success of our workplaces. Now, there's also this ongoing argument at the moment around, well, why would people want to come back? And we've seen articles in all sorts of media outlets at the moment around people mandating return to the office, others that are enabling different mixes of in the office and at home, others that are saying they're never coming back again. But if we're trying to encourage employees to return to our workplaces and we want them to do so voluntarily, we need to look at what is the experience that we are offering them that is going to entice them back into that workplace. Now, you may be familiar with the Leesman Index. Now, the Leesman Index, what it does is it measures a number of different factors within workplace environments to give them a score. And when we're measuring those scores, what we're looking at is how well those workplaces are performing. Now, what they've actually created is a work from home score as well. And what they found is that when an employee's work from home score is higher than their work from the office score, it's actually going to be very difficult for them to entice people back in, because the quality of the setup and the ability and the space that they have at home is actually better than the quality of the space that they have in the workplace. So getting people to come back in is going to be a significant challenge. However, if you've got a really high workplace index score and it's higher than your employee's work from home score, you're actually going to find it far easier to entice people back into the workplace. And the reason being is because the workplace environment is offering them a better experience. Perhaps you've got better technology, better setups, better spaces, free coffee, all of those other sort of perks that you might be using to entice people back in. But essentially it's about what is the experience that I get from coming back in there. And again, this comes back to this ability to connect, to collaborate, to communicate, and to build that social capital. And so when we have that score that is higher than that one at home, it's far easier to get people back into the workplace. So that's something to consider there as well. Now, a lot of the conversations that we're having with clients at the moment are around how we're going to get their employees back into the workplace. We're also transforming those workplace environments to be far more progressive and forward thinking about how they are going to support not just the employees, but the organisation into the future. But how do we then go about communicating that? And some of the challenges that we're seeing are around people still referring to desk sharing as hot desking. Hot desking has such a bad rap, and it has such a baggage of emotions that come with it when people start to think about hot desking. And what we want to be doing is reframing that, because we want to be encouraging people to come back into the workplace, but see it as a flexible, agile, adaptable space that supports them on so many different levels. And it may mean that they do need to share a desk and that they no longer own a desk, but we need to look at the ways that we communicate that to encourage people to think about things a little bit differently. Some of the other challenges are that we're working with people who are coming from a place of what they know. They are not familiar with what is the opportunity that is sitting in front of them. When they're not familiar with the technology upgrades that are going to happen. They're not familiar with the different spaces and the different tools and the different opportunities that the new environment is going to enable them to be able to connect and to collaborate and to build that sense of community in a new way. So often when we are working with organisations, the challenges that are put in front of us from the employees are coming from a position of what they know. So they don't know that they're going to have better quality meeting rooms or that their tech is going to be enhanced or set up differently. So often we go in and we start working with organisations and we start engaging with the teams, and what we're hearing is, oh, well, we need fixed desks because we need this kind of tech set up, and it needs to be like this because this is how our team is going to operate. But when we start to dig into that and we start to unpack it, a couple of things that we start to look at, well, how many days a week are you actually going to be in the office? What does that tech setup actually look like for you at home? Is it comparable to what you're asking for when you are in the office? If you're only going to be in the office for 2 days a week, why do we need that particular setup here when you potentially don't have that set up at home? Or if you do have that set up at home, why do we need to replicate it in the office here again for 2 days a week? What are you actually going to be doing when you are in the office here for those 2 days a week? Are you actually going to be physically sitting at your desk and working, or are you going to be engaging with your team? Are you going to be having huddles? Are you going to be collaborating? Are you in meetings? Are you meeting with other departments? So it's about challenging some of those ideas and some of those perceptions, because a lot of the way that we are coming at these situations is from a place of what we know. And that makes sense. We have been experiencing work in one way for such a long period of time that we now need to really start to challenge our thinking and think about how that opportunity can change in the future. How can we work differently? What can we be doing differently? Where should I be doing particular tasks? What am I actually doing when I come into the office? What we want to be doing is we're bringing these employees on that journey because, as I said, they're coming at these spaces from where they are now. They only know what they have now available to them, not what is going to be available to them in the future. And so it's really about taking them on that journey. A large part of the process of returning people back into the workplace is to start to work through that change transformation piece. We need to be educating them on new work settings, new different tools that they're going to have, new technologies that may be available, new behaviours that we expect, new workflow patterns that we're going to be talking about. If we're transitioning through the office on a 2 to 3 day a week cycle, what do we expect people to be doing in the office, and what do we expect people to be doing from home, and how are we going to facilitate that with the spaces and the tools and the technology that we're going to be providing? Now, many people have not worked in this way before. This is all new. And so it really is a process of experimentation, of trying new things, testing things, challenging ideas. And it's about bringing them to the table to be part of this whole conversation, that co-collaboration of communicating what it is that you're hoping to achieve as an organisation and inviting them in to start to contribute to the conversation. Because what I have found through running these workshops with organisations is that some of the best ideas come from your employees. When we start to challenge some of the ideas that people have when they bring these concerns to the table, and we start to ask some of these prompting questions, the responses to those questions is often where the answers come from. The answers are coming from within your business. So it's really important to involve them in the conversation because you will be very surprised at what might come out. And the last thing I want to leave you with is that your employees don't know what they will have to enable them to work differently in the future. So it's about communicating that and making sure that they understand the opportunity that's there and the potential that they're going to have for this workplace of the future. So that's all of the things that we're going to be wrapping up and talking about far more deeply in the Thriving Workplace Conference in Sydney this week. I'm super excited about it, and this is just something that I am so passionate about because our workplaces have so much potential to really support the way that our people perform, the way that they behave, and the way that they feel when they come into the workplace environment. And as I said, our workplace is all around connection, collaboration, and community. It's about building that social capital within your organisation. And that comes down to understanding how you want people to connect, how you want them to collaborate, what kind of spaces are you going to be providing to support that? How is the technology going to enable that? And then what is that change journey that you are going to take your people on to enable them to perform in that way? So if this is something that has interested you and you are challenged by this in your own organisation, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to have a chat, because this is what we do. I can come in and I can run a workshop with your organisation. I can do a keynote presentation to your leadership team. We can engage and have a conversation around what are the opportunities that exist within your business. How can you start to transform and unlock some of that information that's already there to enable you to start to plan forward, to create a workplace that's better than what your employees have got at home and they want to come into the workplace. This is all of the possibility, the potential that sits before you for you to create the optimal workplace experience for your people. And that's what it's all about. If we want to be engaging with our best talent and attracting the best talent into our organizations, we need to be putting our best foot forward. And it's all about how we're creating that sense of social capital through connection, collaboration, and community within our workplaces. So have a beautiful week. I'm very excited to be going and spending it with real people again. And I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Thank you for joining me for Work Life by Design. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love you to rate, review, or subscribe, or all three, in iTunes and share it with your friends so we can continue to build this community. I would love to hear from you, so if you have any thoughts, questions, or suggestions, you can connect with me on Instagram at Melma or send me an email at melissa@melissamarsden.com.au. I hope this episode has given you a few sparks of inspiration so that you can design a work life you love.